I'd like to call to order the March 14 meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Council members Klein.
Here.
McCoy.
Here.
Judkins.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
McElhenney.
Here.
Well done.
Everyone is accounted for. Very good.
Perfect
If
timing.
everyone would rise and join us in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the agenda. I am not aware of any changes.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Motion by Eric, second by Ted. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next up, we have our citizens presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And Pete, if you could check and see if there's anyone online who needs to participate tonight. While Pete does that checking, I'll just remind everyone that we follow the pillars of character counts in all of our operations here. We endeavor to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And so in everything we do, we expect those that are in the chambers and here would follow those principles as well. Pete, do we have anyone online?
For those online who would like to present to the council, you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. At the bottom of that app, you'll see the reactions emoji. Click on that, and from there you can raise hand. Mayor, I do not see any hands going up.
All right, thank you very much. Next then, we have, again, I didn't see anyone approach the podium, so we'll move on to consent, which requires a resolution.
Approval. Second.
Motion second, that would be motion by Eric and second by Ted. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you very much. Next up, we have an exciting swearing in here, and I'll let the chief explain that.
All right. Trent, you want to come on up? This evening, we have a promotion to the rank of sergeant, so he's very exciting. I'd like to introduce Trent Weiler. He's a local guy born in Des Moines, raised in Ankeny, attended high school there, and obviously he ran cross country in track. So he runs a lot farther and faster than I do. He then went on to Central College in Pella. He continued running cross country and track and graduated with a bachelor's degree in social sciences in 2006. He joined the Clive Police Department in 2009. He's worked in patrol for a number of years and has been a detective for the last 4 years. Trent is also our bicycle instructor, so he also stays fit out on the Greenbelt Park. He will be assigned to take over the second watch from Sergeant Johnston here in the back, which is the afternoon shifts 3 to 11. When Trent is not at work, he enjoys spending time outside with his wife, Jana, and 2 young boys who are here tonight. So after the oath, Jana is going to pin his badge on him. So, Your Honor,
Thank you.
you can do the honors.
If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
Trent Weiler,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my abilities,
discharge all of the duties of the office of police sergeant
discharge all of the duties of the office of police sergeant
for the city of Clive, Iowa,
for the city of Clive, Iowa,
as now and hereafter required by law.
as here now as required after by law.
Very good. Congratulations.
Close enough.
Yeah, if you want to pin it on, you don't have to try to get it back out the bottom hole. You can let it hang there if you like.
Wear your best, Trip.
All right.
Stay with me.
You guys want to get your picture taken? No. But- We can try to
Hold the
get
book
one in
up.
the lobby.
Yeah, hold the book up with you.
you.
Look at that logo.
Coming up?
You right there?
I miss those days.
He's got a fire truck book. Oh, man. Oh, okay.
I didn't want
Coy photo bombing him.
Look, I'm tired of moving.
Alright. Any other? You wanna
We'll see if
try?
we'll see if we can get him out in the
I'm
lobby.
trying to get down, you're gonna have to get me out.
Okay.
Thank you, Howard.
Congratulations, Sergeant.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's always great to do that. Next up, we have our action items. The first we have is a public hearing on our rehab project. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, it was published in the Des Moines Register on February 28th, 2024.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week on a couple projects, the first of which is our asphalt overlay for this year. The project limits will be on Hawthorne Drive between 142nd and 149th Street, and then also on 145th Street up from Hawthorne around to 144th Street. We received 3 bids. You have that tabulation in your packet. Des Moines Asphalt and Paving was red low. We've worked with them on several similar projects in the past, and we'd be recommending award tonight to them for the base bid plus alternate. You have to answer any questions.
Questions for Jen? Yes, Ted?
So, Jim, this is in a neighborhood, right? So what's how is this gonna proceed as far, I mean, is it complete rehab then where the whole street shut
Nope.
down?
No, this is the easy button. So we're going to be doing the asphalt overlay.
just
So
the
the first
overlay.
step, we'll be doing some full depth patching in advance of that. So similar to other patching projects, we'll have one lane open while that's going on. So then we'll follow with the overlay itself, which, there'll be a couple days of paving on that at least. And our message on that has always been, we start after folks leave for the day. And then by the time again, everyone's schedule is different, but by the time they get back late afternoon, evening, they should be able to get back to their residence then. So initial notification will be by mail, just project notification. We'll probably do another written notice a couple weeks in advance once we know the schedule has firmed up a little bit. Also, in all those communications, as usual, we'll be asking for email addresses because especially in that short term when we're doing the paving, it's best to get that message out for that. Afterwards, there's some additional work. We'll follow up with doing the sidewalk ramps, the ADA sidewalk ramps, and adjusting some manholes. There's a late start date of end of July. They can start sooner than that, but that's what they need to start, still get it done this year. And then there's 40 working days assigned. So again, that'd be 8
Like
weeks
2
of good
months,
weather.
yeah, okay.
So we don't count a day if they get rained out or anything like that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Have we done, I know we talked about doing asphalt overlays as part of a way to, and Jeff, you can address this too. Have we done this before? Recently, this is the start of a series of asphalt overlays?
In this neighborhood, yes. The last project similar to this was in 2020 in the Indian Hills neighborhood up by 99th, 89th and the 90th area. And then in 2017, we did one north of Clark, 100th and 101st, 102nd, 103rd in that area. So we have done similar projects in the past, just not every year.
Well, I certainly like to see the estimates on this. So we're getting some great pricing with this. So
Yep.
always like to see that.
Councilmember Klein, this is just to remind the council, and Jeff can speak to this too, we know that some of the streets in these neighborhoods are could be closer to reconstruction, but knowing that there's so many of them.
Right.
The asphalt overlay approach is for us to get in and get, hopefully a 15+ year pavement there, because to try to catch up on reconstruction in the neighborhood with particularly that Country Club West, with the tough aggregates that we're dealing with there. This is our way of advancing these things forward more quickly. And one thing that Jeff and I have been discussing, and we wanted to get these bids in, is to see, because we're seeing some savings with these bids, is how can we allocate that to other projects, whether it's Linan and another street project, because I know that's a focus of the council. So we're going to see if we could also maybe even put out another overlay if we see this kind of good pricing later this
Looking
year.
at Country Club or Country Club West?
Country Club Boulevard is one that we've been talking about for that stretch south of the dam.
I think those
So-
residents would appreciate to see a little progress at least
Yeah,
starting.
Yeah,
so.
so we're kind of doing the math right now, putting the numbers together. We think we might be able to eke that out for Country Club Boulevard maybe yet this year. It's just a question of getting the timing right and getting it out there. But with the bid pricing that we're seeing,
Great.
if they're able to get, with the dry spring that we've already had, if they're able to get started early, a lot of these contractors, will they be hungry for fall work, is what we're hoping for to keep this good pricing. I don't know if you want to add to that at all, Jeff.
Well, a couple of things I do want to add. Yeah, we did talk to some asphalt contractors. They're not full through the year at this time. They're still looking. Not to say they won't, but if the weather holds, it's going to be tough to fill them up with the amount of work that's out there. So opportunity might present itself to get some good bids. If we take them and they're not great, we don't necessarily have to award, but we can sure look and try to get something there. And then along with that, I do want to answer and respond to some of the questions we've had previously about asphalt maintenance, what we do with the driveways. This project is set up to feather into the driveways. That's what's going to happen. Along with that is our commitment. And as we've included in the budget, a couple extra people to identify and spend more time on crack filling, keep up with that, identify that, make sure that as part of this program, the best time to crack fill our asphalt streets is in the fall, right before winter. So we get all the cracks sealed, do the best we can to keep moisture out. So this fall, we'll be making a concerted effort to get to all the asphalt streets. Not only the new ones should be okay, but the ones we've done in the past, to start working back through that. Set up a program where every other year we're getting to the streets to make sure the cracks are sealed and stay with them. With that, going back to the ones that have been sealed, as you drive around, some of the driveways are still holding up. Some aren't. There's some that need some work, and we're going to take a look at that. If they need more than just crack fill along the edges to seal them, we may have to take a little bit of asphalt out and put a new wedge in and then seal it back up. And we'll be doing that as part of our operations. With, of course, the addition of asphalt, it's going to increase our crack sealing. And that's why we've got a couple people in the budget and why we need to keep moving forward. As Matt mentioned, ideally, we'd like to tell you, let's just replace this and not do this. But we're at the end of the life. We're doing everything we can to get a few more years out of it and extend that service life. And hopefully we get some good results and get the years we're looking for out of it.
Jeff, how do you work that mastic in as well in your schedule? How does that play into your program?
Mastic is set up to be a little bit wider cracks. It'll be in some of these concrete streets where you see it eaten out and stuff like that. It's the Swiss Army knife for after the crack gets too wide to crack fill. So we will have a lot of that because it's going to take us a while, even with the commitments we have, to get through all the streets and country club that are seeing this. I know that we notice with those that we have done mastic on in the past and done some proper patching, they're not coming back the next year. We're getting a couple, 3 years out of them, which is, helping us not have to go back every year to the same places. So it'll be a big benefit to us overall as we move forward and work on this. The other thing is, as we overlay some of these streets and reduce the amount of, exposed streets that are creating potholes, we'll have a little bit less pothole work and use some of that time to help keep up with some of the other operations too.
Summer Drive, it's worked out really well. I know the residents are very happy with that. And it seems like it's worn very well too. So I'd like to see that.
Good.
Any other questions?
Move to
Again,
close public hearing.
motion is second, motion by Eric, second by Ted. Further discussion, seeing none, please vote on closing the public hearing. And the public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specifications.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Ted. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move to receipt of bids.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Ted to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
And move the resolution, award the contract to Des Moines Asphalt and Paving for $508,646.30.
Second.
Motion by Eric, second by Ted to award the contract. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have a public hearing on Hickman and 161st. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, it was published in the Des Moines Register on February 28th, 2024.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, the second project is a joint project with the city of Waukee. This is for the reconstruction of Southeast Legacy Point Boulevard. That's across from 161st Street on the Clive Waukee border there. It's adjacent to the Quick Star site development that will be also happening this year. We received 9 bids. You have that tabulation as well. Again, we're seeing really good prices. Snyder helped us out with this design. We worked with them on the estimate and kind of took their lead on that one, and we kind of ended up in the same place. We reviewed those numbers, and you can see the low 4 are all within 5% of each other. We've worked with all those folks before, Sternquist included. They were red low. We'd be recommending award to them tonight. Happy to answer questions.
Questions for Jim?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Ted, second by Eric to close the public hearing. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Motion by Ted, second by Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote on the plans and specs? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move to receive the bids.
Second.
Motion by Ted, second by Eric to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
And move the resolution awarding the contract to Sternquist Construction for $559,455.
Second.
Motion by Ted, second by Eric. Further discussion? Michael?
Quick question on Sternquist. That's a new name for me. Maybe not to you, but
No, we worked with them on many projects. They actually worked on 2014 on that full reconstruction at the bottom of the hill on Lincoln when they were the prime. We've seen them in the meantime on a lot of development projects out west paving as well.
Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Jim. Next, we are talking about Stonegate and the replacement.
Ready for the presentation. Great. Well, we just want to give you a quick update on the Stonegate Park Playground and kind of the next steps to get that replaced. So as you can see here, it's been in this kind of state since last August, since it was burned in an arson out there. So since that time, we've been working to put together plans to get that replaced. And One of the things that we did is we reached out to 4 different playground manufacturers, asking them for different concepts and how they would potentially replace this playground out there. We gave them a total budget of $300,000 that included purchase of the playground, purchase of the playground safety service, as well as all installation. We evaluated as staff those proposals and kind of narrowed them down and put the best 4 out for a public vote. So on February 9th, we put that out. We did a couple different things to get input on that. We mailed postcards to all residential properties within 1,500 feet of Stonegate Park. We placed signs out there with QR codes, encouraging people that visited the park to go online and give us their input. And then we did also social media posts and a few media interviews. In total, we got 418 responses from people on what they would like to see out there based on the 4 proposals. Before I tell you the winner, I'll just show you what we gave them as options. So this is option 1 out there. This was from Landscape Structures. Option 2. Option 3. And option 4. So you can kind of just see here, option 3 was the runaway winner out there. And what we found with this kind of approach to figuring out how we wanted to approach the playground is when we let the manufacturers give us their best proposal for that, we got some, as you can see in option 3, that gave us a really good proposal that likely exceeds the value of the $300,000 that we set for the budget by over $100,000. We think they underwrote that by about $120,000. So what we're able to get is a really nice playground out there for more than we normally would have if we would have bid out in a typical way. And you can see the neighborhood responded. They really enjoyed that playground and are excited to see it out there.
Yeah, that's great. The option 3 is like twice the size, if not more.
Look at
Yeah.
option 3 and option 4.
Right.
The value.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and one of the things we did as part of that, where they were able to select what proposal they like, we also had an open comment section. What would you change? What would you do differently? Colors, missing amenities, what would you get rid of? And so what we saw is they wanted swings. You can kind of see there wasn't big swings in the option 3, so we changed that out. We also saw a desire for maybe less bright colors and more little earth tones on that. So we've worked and are continuing to work with the playground manufacturer to do some more earth tones on that color palette as well. So responding to that and making those changes still within that budget that we set for the project. So tonight, just a couple of things, approval of the purchase and installation of that. Once that passes, then we will get that equipment ordered, and the hope is for construction here and be completed by July sometime. Part of that will just depend on the overall timing and manufacturing process. One quick item that will come up at a future meeting is a contract for that installation. Even though the installation is included in the purchase of the equipment tonight, we just want to get a contract that will outline the roles and responsibilities for each person.
Does that same do the surface, Richard, as well as putting up the equipment as well?
Yep. Yeah, so it'll be a team that comes in, just does the whole project, and then they'll be here until it's done and then they'll leave.
What I really like the outreach that we've done, right? When you make it a community neighborhood, it's always best to, hey, find out what the residents really want, because it's really their playground. It's the citizens and what they're, so I really love the outreach right there. The installation, one of the things that we've done in the past with different parks is had an opportunity for people to show up, residents to show up and help on some form of that. Have we thought about that at all? I know you've got a team coming in, but have we considered that at all?
So we haven't on this playground, just to the size and complexity of it. We would probably consider that on a smaller playground. So in the future, we have money for a replacement of playgrounds at a few other parks. We'll probably consider it as part of that, but just due to the size of this one, we probably won't.
What about the grand opening?
So we're hoping in July sometime, but we'll have some sort of rededication out there and get as many people out there as possible. Great thing about doing the kind of online survey, we got over 200 email addresses. So we're now able to communicate with all those people that gave us their email address. And so we'll keep them updated on the status of the project. And then, like you said, ability to celebrate when we're all done.
You know, I know there was obviously an arson that prompted this. I don't believe we caught the individual, chief. So still, but we have the opportunity here to, when we do a ribbon cutting like this, to have pictures before and after and really play this up that shows, look, this is what happened to your park. Here's what we've done. Let's everyone keep our eyes open, prevent future incidents like this. So we can use this as a precedent of moving forward with this is what happened.
Yeah.
And here's how the city took care of it.
Yeah, happy to do so.
I'll move to approve the purchase uh, by Play Pro Recreation for Stonegate Park Playground at the sum of $297,910.
Second.
Motion by Michael, second by Srika.
I do have a couple questions I'd like to.
Continue.
Sorry, I just had to jump in.
That's
with the
okay.
motion.
I would have made the motion too. So Eric has a good point with the RSA. Are we going to have cameras up then in this location?
No,
to help?
the intent is not to put any cameras up here. Matt and I had a small conversation on that. We feel like having a conversation about cameras at large in the park system would really need to be a policy discussion with the council at some point. At this point, we just think it'd be very tough to put a camera up. If you really want to do that, you probably have to have multiple cameras, multiple angles, because there's not a lot of light in there at night, you know, and so it'd be very difficult to catch someone unless you've got it just perfect. But
That's a good
cameras
point.
as a whole would be a larger
That's
policy
valid.
Yeah, as
discussion.
we've talked about it, because we had a neighbor, somebody who lives in the neighborhood who happens to be in that business, who asked about that and out of, you know, really appreciated that we're doing what we're doing and felt really bad about what happened with the arson. And, you know, it was interesting as Richard and I were talking about it. I mean, there's pros and cons to it, right? These are public spaces. And I think if that's something that the council is interested in, I would want to have some policy discussion and direction from you all, have the Parks Board weigh in on that too, just in terms of going down that road of putting parks or cameras in park spaces. Of course, there's the expense associated with that as well. Those expenses have come down quite a bit in terms of technology. But in terms of just maintaining that, that's probably a secondary item. I think it's more the policy question of the pros and cons of doing that. I know there's been, you know, hesitations about how many cameras do we put in public spaces. So I'd want to have that discussion with you all if you're, you know, that's something I was going to maybe a strategic planning topic or something, if that's something you guys were interested, you all were interested in the future.
Yeah, far be it for me to push cameras, but.
You're always-
That's why I thought it was very interesting you asked that
Yeah,
question.
I was curious, but
Always pushing.
it's a worthy discussion. I
Yeah.
think it's definitely a legitimate discussion,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I agree with that, but before you get to
Yeah, go ahead.
second, that, you know, the temporary cameras, I think the usage of them and the threat of them is warranted, right? So game cameras, whatever cameras you use to get some photos, that we will do that, but maybe, you know, a bigger discussion on the permanent ones. But
Right.
I'm going to be opposed to, right when this kicks off, I think it was just kids doing some ridiculously stupid things and perhaps they won't come back. But
And we have utilized the cameras on a temporary situation before. If you all remember the bridge jumping, there was times where we used
you caught Weaver.
things for that.
All
So
three of my boys
Beaver
got
boys.
caught on camera, I think.
there was times that we have implemented temporary for specific situations.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Real quick, the 1,500 feet, what is that based off of? I mean, that's about what, quarter mile, something like that? I
It
mean,
was quarter miles.
Yeah, it was more just a guy looking at the map and seeing like how far of a distance would get us. And so what that did there, it got us to all the major kind of landmarks out there. So it got us west of 156th Street. It got us to Hickman. It got us to the east city limits, and it got us to the north city limits there.
that
And
was specific to this project.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we just wanted to make
Which is
sure.
good. That's what I wanted to hear. That's
Yeah,
good.
we really kind of looked at it still like, who did we think that this park is serving on a regular basis from it being a neighborhood park? And we kind of felt like those barriers, Hickman, 156th Street, really were probably some definitions on people are going to walk east of that to the park, north of Hickman to the park. And then we just went a little bit farther up into Urbandale as well, because it, you know, theoretically, it probably is partly their neighborhood park as well, not beyond the city limits.
Perfect. Okay.
The-
And then Matt, can you remind me on the financing, how much insurance cover on this?
Insurance will cover a third of it. As we talked about, we had Stonegate
Right.
scheduled for replacement
Right.
a couple years out in the capital equipment plan. Because we kind of have regular schedules of every other year doing these big
Mhm.
playground updates. So we moved it up
Mhm.
and then slid everything else a year back.
So we covered 2/3, insurance covered 1/3.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
We
good.
just escalated that.
We normally
Yeah.
budgeted 200,000 for a playground replacement. And then we already had that, and then using the insurance money, and then seeing, actually, I would agree with Richard, we're getting, I think, more than 300,000 of value
Yeah,
in this
that's really
playground. So I
impressive.
think it was good to see the manufacturer sharpen their pencil on this one.
Yeah, That's great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone else? Otherwise, would the council please vote, and would the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0. We'll look forward to that. Next up, we'll talk about coyotes.
All right, tonight we have before you a recommended plan for how we will respond to and seek to manage coyotes within the city of Clive. This is a plan that in full transparency, we did not create. This is actually a product of the city of Urbandale and Iowa DNR. So, we see periodically from time to time coyote reports. Urbandale's had more than their fair share of them. So they really felt like they needed to find a way that how they were going to consistently respond and handle responses to coyotes out there. So they spent quite a bit of time working with the DNR on that. And one of the things they approached us is said, the DNR would really like it if, other communities really took up this plan as well, because then it would create some consistency across cities as well on how we approach and how we treat kind of reports, attacks, how we respond to them. So we really felt after going through it and meeting with their city staff, it was the right approach. Really what it does is it standardizes based on the incident or the report on how we respond to it. And then we do that the same across the city. So in the past, maybe if you call the police department, you might get one response to that, or if you call parks, you might get a different response. And so looking at how we standardize all that and how we respond to the public, and also then gives the council, when you get those questions, how is the city going to respond to that? So our recommendation is approval of this plan for that reason, because it creates that consistency, as well as then the hope is other cities are going to continue to pick that up. So I know the city of Johnston and the city of Waukee are something they're looking at as well. Urbandale's adopted it, and they keep asking other communities if they want to consider it. So that would be our recommendation for approval of that. There is some minor code changes that will need to be done in terms of allowing trapping to happen. If we do get a nuisance coyote, that will be brought forward at a larger code change coming up in the next month or
Yeah,
so.
the next council meeting will, as a part of the bigger recodification, since it was a really minor change, we've included it in that recodification that Matthew will be bringing forward at the next council meeting.
Because it's coyotes or?
Just animal trapping, period. This plan recommends the city working with a certified wildlife expert. And our code just wasn't, we needed to clean up our code a little bit on that specifically. It allows the city to do it on city property, but if it's a different kind of situation, we wanted to make sure at least that contractor was covered under our code allowances. So just a little bit of cleanup on that in one aspect of the code.
I just want to thank both Matt and Richard for jumping on this. When I was campaigning last fall, I heard about this a lot. We're going door to door. Quite a few residents were really concerned about this. And I also heard multiple times that Urbandale had this great plan. And why can't Clive be like Urbandale? So there you go. So
Usually it's the other way around.
yeah, I know, exactly, right? So, but at least, like you said, we get these complaints now, we can say we have a plan, here it is, and this is being adopted by other western suburbs. So I think this is excellent. I really appreciate it.
There's a staff level too, following your consideration and adoption of this plan. We've talked quite a bit about just communicating the plan itself beyond the communications that's in the plan if a coyote sighting occurs, in terms of having the dedicated website. We've already set up some internal processes for between parks and police department of who gets the inquiry of how we're tracking all of this and tracking the data, and then communicating in a newsletter, social media, that this plan is out there, especially as we're getting into this time of year.
Right.
We're going to start, especially the pup rearing time here, we're going to start to see more activity here again this spring, late winter here, kind of early spring, I guess is what we can call it now. So there is a communication backbone to all of this too, that staff has already talked about.
Matt, will there be a specific POC within the city, so a coyote czar, if you will, that will, at the end of the day will be responsible for coordinating this? Or Richard, will you pick that duty up, or how is that going to work?
So it's really going to depend on the type of incident. There's going to be times where the police department is engaged if there's an attack. But most of the time it's going to be headed out of the leisure services. We're going to keep track of a spreadsheet that tracks all incidences, where they came from and kind of what type of incident it was. So then we can report back periodically to the council and say, you're hearing this, but this is actually what people reported to us over the last year. So we can kind of give you a feel for that and some of the trends that we saw as well. I think like Councilman Weaver talked about when he was out campaigning, got a lot of that. Our sense was a lot of that was probably in the neighborhood around Stonegate.
It was, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, quite a few.
That-
There's two neighborhoods where it was
Yep.
concentrated.
Mhm.
And the one across from the Brownell Sports Complex as well.
Yeah, and so we actually, outside of some of the things that he was hearing, we got a lot of those comments as well. And what we think was going on out there is there was probably a coyote that set up a den in that basin just south of Stonegate Park. And so people were seeing it when they were out in the park, they're seeing it in the neighborhood because that was kind of maybe, we think, the home range of those coyotes, because that otherwise that neighborhood's not directly connected to any green bells. So we think that's probably what happened. We didn't want to ground truth it just in case, you know, we ran across a coyote with a couple pups that was a little bit territorial, but we think that's probably what happened because that was kind of the heart of where most of those sightings were.
That Councilmember Klein, typically it's been in our Parks Division. You know, Jeff Thielen's taken the lead on a lot of this stuff in the past. He's probably our local coyote expert. As much as you can have one, I guess.
You know, we like data and, you know, we like metrics. So we're interested to see what, you know, how this comes out. So.
And I would, you know, one of the things that you'll see in the plan is we actually set up a dedicated email address, so wildlife@cityofclive.com. So if you know people that see wildlife sightings, tell them to report it there, and it all comes to an email box that multiple people have access to. Any reports we get there will get added to the spreadsheet.
We future-proofed it to wildlife just in case it's things other than
Something
coyotes
else,
that somebody
yeah.
might want to report.
Ox,
Good
beaver,
Chickens.
chickens.
Locust. I'll move to resolution.
Second. That was loud.
That, Ted made motion and we'll give Michael the second for this one. Get him in the record. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes 5-0. Next, we need a motion on a pay request for RDG.
Move approval. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was Srikant with a second by Ted. Further discussion, seeing none, with the council please vote. And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes with 4 votes and 1 abstention. I think. We'll see how my predictions
Mhm.
are correct.
I voted no just to spite you.
Okay, yes. That could happen.
That's right.
Next item, Matt, you're going to tell us about our financial projections.
Yeah,
long-term.
thank you, Your Honor. I'll start it off tonight and have Pete chime in as well. So this was one of the top priority items of the city council. We kind of been referring it to as the DIP study in terms of kind of looking at as our community builds and grows out, what's the future look like for the city of Clive and what can we learn from other communities that have faced similar situations that may be past that point have been built out for a number of years, and what can we learn? And so Pete has on the screen here, and I'll have him walk through is it's kind of a memo outlining this, but we're really, as we have talked about it at a staff level, we're really looking at kind of 2 parallel paths as we've been doing more research and study into this is the comparison city study that you see here that we've been discussing with Greater Des Moines Partnership and others as potential partners, as Pete will go into. And then the second track, which is really the financial why, the financial analysis of at what point do things start to get challenging because of that built out condition. Pete and I have had a conversation with Matt Stoffel, who you've seen in this council chambers before, with Public Financial Management, who's done similar kind of financial modeling, goes beyond kind of the internal financial modeling that we do here to really start to build a scope that we want to discuss with him of how to build that model for us, to start to answer that why question financially of when, you know, the revenues expenses start to really have some challenging times because of we're in a built out condition and with changes to the property tax law where revenues are going to have to be considered, expense changes might have to be considered. When is that? Is it 5 years out? Is it 10 years out? When do those challenges start occurring? So that can also inform some of the questions and some of the comparison work that we do with these other communities of, okay, when you faced X, you know, how did you respond? Or when Y came along, how did you respond as a community? Were you reactive to it? Were you proactive in addressing it? And what are tough policy questions that you wrestled with? And so that's really, we wanted to do tonight is just give you kind of a little bit of an update of where we're at in this process. As we're kind of seeking these partners, whether it's, consultant work or organizations that we're members of, like the partnership as an investor. But wanted to really give you an update of where we're at with this process. And so Pete, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit kind of through the memo and our work discussion so far with the partnership.
Great, thanks, Matt. So the memo is split up to reflect the two branches of the overall study. First two bullets here are referencing what we think is best work done with Matt Stoffel and his team, should that come together, or another partner who can help us do the financial focused forecasting. The portion that we think is right for the partnership or a similar group has to do with identifying the comparison communities and then learning from those cities. We've tried to frame up our questions very broadly so that we don't go in with too many preconceived notions of what the questions ought to be, because we want to really be on a posture of learning from these other cities, seeing what they can teach us, tell us what are those questions that we might want to be digging into. There are a few, though, that we know are going to inevitably come up. That top bullet here, when we're talking about land use and density. We assume that Clive will continue to be primarily a residential community with some focused commercial corridors serving those communities. But we think it's like that the complexion of those residential neighborhoods will change as housing stock reaches this sort of life. And as we start to wonder about what would a Clive style density, gentle density, as Doug has used the term in the past, what's that going to look like? How do we incent that? Where would we want to choose to try and incent that if we choose to do any incenting at all? So that's that first bullet. Second, then, bullet has to do with economic development, how we've done it in the past and how we might need to do things differently in the future. This whole DIP study I want to acknowledge was an idea that has been used in other communities, but it really came to the fore during discussions with the Economic Vitality Committee last year and the good work that those volunteers did for the city of Clive. The last bullet is very much about cost. How do we change our service delivery models? Are there more opportunities for collaborating with neighboring communities? Are there ways for us to collaborate more with private sector or nonprofits to deliver services? What have these other cities, when they were faced with those financial constraints or new demands from their residents and businesses, how did they respond to deliver high quality services at the best value possible for taxpayers? So we're looking forward to digging deep into these areas and many others that could come up. The last part of the memo is outlining some of the specific asks that we would make. Similar characteristics to Clive. We'd like to help us reach out to those groups. We've got a lot of, we anticipate there'll be a lot of folks in those communities that are anxious to tell their story and help us do better in the future, whether that's a chamber of commerce or other city staff or other elected officials at the city level or other levels of government. We think we're going to find a lot of folks who are very happy to share their knowledge with that we can do better for businesses and residents. We may want our partnership friends or group this work to come along with this when we go out and visit. Right now, we think those visits are likely in summer time, maybe in the late summer. And then finally, we'll work friends at the partnership to analyze what we've heard from those folks and other data that we've collected from those communities. The last thing I'd say about this is not the end of it. We've framed this broadly to get a start. We think that there's probably a period of time before we reach build out, and even period after when we reach build out, when things are going to still remain largely stable, though I don't want to discount what could happen if there's a major economic shift or if there's something major that happens at the state or federal level that could really accelerate this. But we do think that there's time on the clock for us to do good study and continuous study. So we'll do a good work on this part of the study and then refine our questions and decide what do we need to dive into next. Keep bringing it back to all of you so that you can weave these learning, this learning that we're doing into strategic planning and other policies that you all choose to pursue. With that, we're happy to answer questions.
And one thing I would add to Pete's comments too is, yeah, I agree in the sense of that I think we're going to be building kind of a cohort, hopefully of communities that we can track each other over time. As we hit certain key points, whether it's near build out, at build out, or after, that we can hope to have a continual relationship and it isn't just kind of a one-off type situation that we can track over time. And then who knows, there might be other communities that come along that we add to the dynamic. But I would definitely agree that this is going to be a kind of an initial phase of work that we'll probably likely come back to as we wrestle with some of these policy questions and prioritize them, right? We won't necessarily be able to maybe do all things at once, but kind of what is the right time for certain policy questions of being maybe proactive on certain spaces that we're learning from some of these comparison communities. And then how does that match up with the financial, reality or why that we have will be important. Yeah, happy to answer any questions, Your Honor.
We'll start on the end, Srikant.
Yeah, so you kind of addressed one of my questions as far as like continuing to keep contact with those communities. But just from a process standpoint, and maybe we don't know this yet, but is the idea that we would ask those questions kind of related to the bullet points that Pete was talking about before we do the visit? So that way we kind of have an idea of what they're kind of have to offer isn't the right word, but maybe like what we could learn from them.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there will be that initial research and reach out on those initial questions before we would go do the leap of making an actual visit and really diving in, because we want to make sure that it matches up
Right.
with some of our curiosities.
Yeah, I don't want us to have to travel out there just to find out, hey, this is apples to oranges.
Right. That's definitely, I think that'll be, if I had to guess how this would play out, is we'll probably identify 2 or 3 that are very obvious in terms of ones that we can learn from. And that's where we're going to maybe put that bigger effort of doing a visit and really getting a feel for the community and maybe sitting down with some folks. I think they're going to be very obvious ones.
But to your point, you kind of alluded to this, like having kind of a network of
Cohort, yeah.
Yeah, like maybe some are a little more dissimilar, but we don't have to visit those. We can still. keep
We
in
still want the data.
contact.
Yeah, we
Right.
still want the research.
Yeah.
Sure.
Agree. Do we have any kind of key deliverable timelines on these, like PFM report or analysis or greater than one partnership report? Or I mean, do we have kind of targeted timelines on that?
Yeah, the timeline on the comparison city piece is we've sent this off to the partnership. We're hoping to hear their reply in terms of, as a kind of a first start of coming alongside us and being a part of this. Our hope was going to be kind of summer, late summer. By that point, we're starting to really target and maybe having some obvious communities that we want to focus on. And so before the end of this year, we would have likely be doing visits. The PFM piece on the financial analysis, I want to get started sooner rather than later, but some of that is also dependent on a certain individual's capacity who we work well with on these kinds of projects because he has a lot of demands on his time. So what we're doing right now is scoping that out with Matt at PFM, because I think he is a really good fit for us on that. He did a lot of that similar work on the CIWW project for us. So I think that's going to be a little bit dependent on, I can't answer the question on his deliverable timeline. And I think that's going to be one where the way I've discussed it a little bit with PFM and Matt is that he's very good at setting up models, and we have some talent internally to maintain models like that. We've done it a little bit with our own budgeting process. So I almost want to do a little bit of a train the trainer type of thing with the financial model, because I think we're going to need to tweak it over time. We don't necessarily need to rely upon Matt to do that every time. So I don't exactly have that all. We don't exactly have that all flushed out yet, but our hope is they're parallel tracks going along with each other. So I don't have a hard date on the second part, but we'll follow up with you as we start to hone that in a little bit better. Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, Matt, I look at this and I love the proactivity. We've been talking about this for years. This is something that we have discussed. So I love the proactivity and especially the specificness as we look at some of the bullet points of what really we want to accomplish. I look at this as a living, breathing document, a multi-year document as we learn from other cities and move forward. I also think that, we do the partnership trip. It's an opportunity for those on the trip to maybe approach our peers on the partnership, Tiffany, who else it is, what we're doing, perhaps glean some insight with them and start prepping them for, just to continue to advocate on behalf of Clive in this study right here.
Yeah, and it interesting opportunity for us too. a lot of the folks, Tiffany included, and a couple of the other senior folks are Clive residents. So they also have a, I think as we've discussed it with
Stakeholders in
them,
this
they
conversation.
see it a couple ways. They obviously have context, right, living in this community. But also I think they, not to put words in their mouth, but I think what they've shared with us is this could be a case study for how it could be replicated with other metro communities that, may be in our position someday down the road. So this is, I think there's an interest for them just in terms of what the regional learnings could be from a community going through a process like this.
Susan, do you have comments or questions?
Yes, I am very happy that it sounds like people are supportive of this moving forward. As Pete mentioned, we did have good conversation about it with the Economic Vitality Committee over the past year, and kudos to staff for bringing it to their attention for discussion, but I think it really helped to focus in on the need for it. So just think it's a great move.
Thanks. Anything from you, Michael?
Yeah. I assume that we still belong to the League of Cities, right?
We do.
Do they have a part in this too? I just haven't heard much. I mean, this seems like it'd be something right. You're looking for comparisons around the state that perhaps they could show value.
That's a good point. We haven't had that conversation with Aaron Mulnex, their director of research. That's something that we can definitely follow up on. We engage with her on a number of legislative issues, so we could definitely do that follow up.
Good idea.
Good point.
Good
I
point.
think, and I know some cities or some towns, I'll give you some names of for September visit, Summit County, that are landlocked and frozen down.
Certain geography you're looking for.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. We have our direction. Thank you, Your Honor.
Very good. Pete, what report do you have for us tonight?
Thank you, Your Honors. I can be brief. Was very active couple of weeks here with the stormwater legislation that the House considered. After an unsuccessful first shot, the House did pass the legislation early this week. Now moves over to the Senate, where they'll need to consider some amendments that were made to the bill. We're going to continue to work very hard to get it cleaned up, not just terms, but also clean it up so that we have scope here that was truly intended. And if the scope is looking like it's going to be far beyond, even when it's amended beyond what it's going to serve the city of Clive, then Matt and I will definitely come back to all of you and sort of explain where we're at. Right now, the way the bill is written, it's not a good one for cities. But the discussion continues, and I want to be especially complimentary, even of the legislators who voted in favor of this in the House. There were a lot of people who dug in on a very technical issue, and we're hopeful that the senators will do likewise and recognize that this bill legislation still needs additional amending. One other really neat thing that happened in the course of that debate, and we've seen it on a couple of other bills too, a number of neighboring communities, especially our partners in Urbandale, I want to call out our friends in Norwalk as well, and Indianola and some others. These were places where the communities really reached out to their legislators and explained to them why good stormwater management is important in the Des Moines Metro. It's important among the West Side communities especially, and everybody who shares Walnut Creek. And you can see in the way that the vote played out that storytelling that we've committed ourselves to is really having a positive effect in helping people understand why good stormwater management is important. Next week, we have the state of the
Pete,
city.
can I
Yes.
stop you on that one? Just make a comment or
Yes, sir.
question. I do think though, that's great that those cities joined in, we joined in, and we talked to our legislators. I do think that we would shortchange ourselves if we didn't say put pressure on the lobbyists as well. Because, and you can do that, right? By their different hats they wear and such, that they are pushing the issues up there on behalf of folks. So I think we need to look at that game as well to make something happen. It can make a change quicker for us.
Mhm.
But maybe perhaps a study of who the lobbyists are on the for and against this, as well as the electeds.
Absolutely. Next week, we have the State of the City address by the mayor that will be at the monthly chamber luncheon. We're looking forward to sharing a lot of very positive information about the budget as you all have shaped it thus far and given staff direction. I want to especially say thank you to my colleague, Molly Elder, our new communications specialist. She's been working very hard to come up to speed with budgets. And when you're doing it for the first time, that's a challenge. But we're going to be sharing some visuals, some data visualizations for all of you that tell that budget story here in Clive. And she's been working hard on getting that ready to go. And sort of our first rollout with some of those visuals will be in the mayor's State of the City address. And then we'll use it as we go through the rest of the budget season. Finally, I hope in the Friday email, you all got a chance to click on the links to the videos that we produced to help with our recruiting for the new police chief and other officers who are joining the Clive Police Department. I think those came out well. And the reason that they came out well was, yes, we had a great videographer and Molly did great work kind of leading the process, but it really was, I think, just the authenticity and the character of our officers who participated. They really come across as people who love their work and who love being a part of the Clive Police Department. And that's what it's going to take for us to keep recruiting great teammates. So special thanks to Captain Rayberg and Chief Anima for being so generous with their time and the time of the entire department on that project.
Anything else, Pete?
No, Your Honor.
Recon.
Because we're eager to hear about DART.
So since you wanted to start there, I'll start on the other end, actually. So real quick, CHS, we have a meeting, Clive Historical Society, we have a meeting with their leadership in early April. They have some pretty big decisions to make in front of them. So, we're still talking through what it's going to look like, but, I'll share more once we learn more, but we do have a meeting set up in April that will probably be a significant shift for the organization. Broadlawns, I mentioned before that I'm on the CEO search committee there. They are starting interviews next week with the candidates. Candidates are pretty strong, so that's moving forward nicely, and hopefully there'll be a decision shortly thereafter. And then for DART, there was another commissioner meeting last week, I believe, and there was continued discussion about the thing that we've all been discussing, the budget for DART. The way they're proceeding forward with the budget is they will pass a larger budget, but they will only authorize, the commissioners will only authorize staff to spend the smaller budget amount until or when or if the city of Des Moines passes their franchise fee, then that authorization would extend to the full budget amount. So
And that's kind of dependent on the election. Is that what we're thinking? And what happens with their upcoming election?
possibly. I'm not convinced of that.
Really?
But that's more my opinion.
Sure.
But
Otherwise, the cuts would take place when?
the cuts would take place and they would start. So there's a process to put them in place, but they would start in the fall. They would start communicating them, I believe, in April, if I remember correctly, because they have to go through the studies and the process. And it's again, it's up to 40% of service cuts. And one of the things that I am a bit concerned about is at the last commission meeting, they discussed express routes, potentially cutting those. And our express route was on that list. Now, it was identified because it is considered a underperforming route. But essentially, there were two options that were put in front of the commission. One was, do we rethink what that route looks like and like basically close that route and then find a new way to allocate that money to provide a more efficient service level, which I think I would be open to that. And I told the commission that makes sense to have that discussion. The other option was we shut down the route and just take the money that we save and put it back towards the budget. And I did indicate to the commission that I would not be on board with that one. And that would make us have to look at what are we putting in and what are we getting out?
The largest share of Clive riders are on that route, aren't they? Or a
so-
significant portion.
So the Hickman Express route, the numbers that they shared is that on average, it's only getting 2 to 4 riders a day.
Your 86th Street route is.
University and
Yeah, University
86.
and 86 is
Down
the
University
higher
Boulevard.
ride
Which is new.
count, and paratransit. So that's why it was identified as an underperforming route, and it was put on this list. So I think a discussion on how do we change that service to better fit the community need makes sense. I don't think it's a reason to say, let's just cut it, because the people that do ride that route to get to work, they don't care if they're the only 2 people on the bus, they still need to get to work.
Unless you propose doing the Dart on Demand for those 2, right? Not for those 2, but for that,
Reallocate
for
the
that
resources.
area, and you reallocate, you just give me a fraction of the resources you're taking out of there, to pick up 2 people to take them to the last mile or to the next
Right,
mile.
to the next
of
bus stop.
Of a bus stop, right?
Yep.
And so
So
hopefully you look at that, they look at that as well of, how do you get those 2 people to 86 and Hickman?
Yep, I already mentioned that to Amanda after
save the
that
money.
meeting. Yep, yeah. So that's hopefully something that staff will propose, but
You could hire an Uber every day for them and be cheap.
and that Dean mentioned that. He said just give them Uber or Lyft credits. But I think staff is going to make some proposals on that. And again, the main thing to take away is, I think we'd all be open to reimagining that, right?
Without a study of reimagining.
Right. Yeah, that's a.
Well, that title got me.
But yeah, just cutting it for the sake of saving money on the budget item doesn't make sense. And reimagine Dart, that's still something that is up for discussion. And I have expressed multiple times that we should not be spending a penny of service money towards doing that reimagine Dart
It's a study, another
Yes.
study.
Yeah, because the cost, yeah, so I think the cost that was last spoken about is the study will cost 1 million overall. And Dart's contribution will be 500,000 to 600,000. And I again, I reiterated probably too many times that we should not be spending any money that could be used for service or keeping buses on the road because we have maintenance issues too, towards doing another study. But
And again, remind me, what route do most Clive riders use? Or is it?
it's a bit of a mix, but I'd say the university route is the highest ridership. I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
98.
92 is what I was thinking.
92.
I think it's 92.
Yeah.
No, it was 90. It's 90, something to the 90.
Which includes,
Goes up and then it goes down for the boulevard. It
Yeah.
goes over to,
Which
it
is a
goes over
new
to
route.
Windsor Heights.
it's a new route and it was demanded heavily. And I think Wittern Group jumped in with.
Yep.
Partnership.
All you could ride.
Yeah, the unlimited use.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the road update.
Any further questions for Srikant?
That's it for tonight.
Ted?
Okay, MPO, hopefully this is the last time I have to report on this topic, but the policy committee unanimously passed the contract for our new executive director. So he is now official under contract. So that was great. We also passed a new contract with a company called Streetlight Data. And it has nothing to do with streetlights, but basically it's a little confusing. Yeah, it's not a study. It's a software package that allows them to collect data for vehicles on the road using cell phones. And so basically they'll tell you the number of vehicles, number of travelers, how fast they're going, whether they're on the phone while they're traveling. I mean, it's kind of scary. Some of the
Like private, are we talking about like city or?
Sounds like
work?
Placer AI type stuff.
That'd be
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
I mean, they're not tracking what you're saying, but they're tracking the cell phone metadata basically, right? So the reason why it could be interesting to us is we will have access to this data. They can also isolate it to where if you want to track number of vehicles on a road and how fast they're going, and as we get all these complaints for certain roads where too many vehicles are going too fast, they can actually track that and tell you how many vehicles are on a road on particular days and how fast they're going, how many are going over the speed limit, things of that nature. And we will have access to all that data.
We can
Is this
pick it
a-
up later.
Is this a
Maybe.
private vendor?
Yeah.
Or okay,
It's called
so,
Streetlight Data is the name of the vendor.
so I don't know what MPO officially stands. So I'm thinking of Iowa's privacy law that goes into
I was
effect next
thinking
year.
too.
Real-time location tracking is definitely sensitive data collection.
Okay.
If you have a private company tracking private citizens in real time.
Yeah, I
mean,
don't know if they're tracking them. I think they're just
Well,
tracking the numbers.
but here's the thing, well, my number is tied to me, right?
True,
So, they'll have my home address, they'll have my work address, they'll
Right.
have this building's address.
So we already have all that.
Yeah, as an example, right? But,
You want to know how fast you're going.
yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it
let me-
real
We can
time?
definitely look into that.
Yes.
I can ask about
So
that.
government entities are excluded from Iowa's privacy law that's going into effect next year.
Okay.
But I don't know if MPO qualifies as a government entity.
Quasi-government, I would think so.
It does.
It's a 2080.
I mean, Polk County uses this. They've already got a contract with this company.
Right. Well,
Um,
Polk County will definitely be covered. as a
yeah,
government
for sure. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know the details
It's a
of
bit
that, but
disconcerting either way.
I know, I agree. I was kind of taken aback by what they could track,
You know, if
but
they start mailing
But it
tickets.
was interesting information that we,
That
as
it
member
is-
communities, have access to the data if we want it.
Ted has pushed surveillance and cameras tonight.
I'm all over it, man.
A little concerned.
Who cares
Would
about
be.
civil liberties?
That's interesting. I didn't realize they were.
This must mean that they have contracts with the carriers to get that data, because
don't
the
know.
carriers would be the only ones capable of providing that data.
Yeah,
Right.
you're probably right. Yeah, I don't know.
That means check your privacy settings on your phone and turn off
Right,
location sharing.
right. So anyways, that's, I found that interesting and thought I'd share. So that's all I have.
Councilmember Weaver, just to add on the MPO piece too, staff and I, we had a meeting with another MPO consultant that's working on the safety study.
Mhm.
They reached out and they're kind of hitting each community to talk about transportation safety, traffic safety plans that we may have in our community, specific initiatives that we're working on. They did indicate that at some point they want to do some type of public meeting in each community. It was Confluence, and then Tool, I think, was the other consultant working with Confluence
Okay.
on that. This is the big traffic study, so we can qualify for the
Right.
federal grants.
Right.
So just to make the council aware that we had an initial conversation, shared some information with them. They've already done some research on our initiatives, and that at some point there'll be some type of public meeting, but we'll make the council aware when that progresses further. So I don't know how abreast they've kept the policy committee on that, but that.
Yeah, I mean,
is-
I know the study. I'm not
Yeah.
involved in the
And this was
details.
the first reach out we had about it. So we just had a meeting with them earlier today.
CVB Catch Des Moines is starting to work on their budget. I'll be serving on the budget committee and we'll keep the council informed on where we stand with that.
Anything else? Susan?
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting my unmute. So the Bravo board met last week and we went over the success of the recent gala. It's interesting that numbers were down, which you could tell. They'd projected attendance of 1,500 and it was 1,200. And they're not totally sure why. Also, while there were more gold sponsorships this year, the number of silver sponsorships declined quite a bit. So the gala still netted about 190,000. So by every stretch of the imagination, it was a success. But there will continue to be evaluation of what kind of what's impacting some of the revenues. And we'll be hearing from Sally Dix at our next meeting. So you'll have a chance to hear more directly from her about that. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was I got word today that there is Watershed Management Authority legislation that's coming out. Apparently, the Department of Agriculture really wants to separate groups that want to focus on water quality and call those watershed partnerships. And those focused on flooding would be called watershed management authorities. And I don't think it makes any sense at all. I think it creates a lot more trouble than it's worth. I don't really understand why this kind of thing continues to be an issue, but I told a couple people who reached out to me about it, since I'm still president of Watershed Management Authorities of Iowa, that it's hard to stop anything with this legislature, it seems to me. So I at least wanted to bring it up at this meeting since we participate directly in 2 watershed management authorities. Pete, I hope this might be something you'll speak up about being against, but we can talk more about that offline if you want. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'll follow that and see what I hear on Monday morning also from the league on our legislative call.
Okay, I'll forward to you what I got today.
Excellent. Thank you.
Susan, do you recall offhand what the net was for Bravo the prior year?
No, I don't. I think it was a little bit more than that, not necessarily substantially, but
Okay.
yeah,
Still 190 is pretty good, I think.
right.
All right, thanks, Susan. Michael?
I do not have anything. Thank you.
Legal counsel.
Nothing. Thank you.
Your Honor, just one thing I wanted to circle back to Pete on is there's a question we wanted to ask the council as we're preparing the citizen survey, the resident survey for this spring. Pete, you want to follow up on that?
Yep, apologies for the oversight. So over the last 3 times we've done the survey, we've continued to tweak how we engage and sort of select the people to participate and then get them to actually submit their information. A lot of it is coming down to paper. In the past, this has been a situation where everybody received a paper survey who had been randomly selected to participate in the first part of the survey when we try and get a statistically significant response rate from multiple neighborhoods across town. Then we open it up to everybody to participate. Once we started doing more of the online surveying, our partner, Polco, started to push people to respond there because if they don't have to handle a paper survey, it saves them time, it saves money, gives us some advantages as well as their client. So to give you a sort of a sense of where we sit today with this trend, and when we did the survey in 2022, we sent it out to 2,800 randomly selected households, and about 40% of the 2,800, our response rate was about 18%, and of that 18%, about 40% responded using the paper survey and 60% responded online. If we want to take that same approach in 2024, this year, we'll be able to send out a postcard and then a paper survey to about 3,000 Clive households. And from that, people can choose to use the paper survey or respond online. We have another choice though, if we would be willing to go with a system where we send everybody a postcard and then a second postcard reminding them that they should take the survey, but then they have to take that survey online, then we would be able to send it out to about 3,800, 800 more households than if we used the same sort of setup that we used last year. So the question, Matt, that I have for you all tonight is, does anybody have a preference for preserving the paper survey, or are we ready to take the leap to say everybody complete their survey online?
Pete, one follow-up too before the council reacts that I just thought of. When they click on the online survey, it provides a translation tool if they wanted to switch to like a language in Spanish, and then also would we have the ability to do like a postcard in Spanish as well as English potentially. I'm just wondering if it also makes it more inclusive to have driving it more online too in terms
Sure.
of translation.
Right. So last year and this year, if we use sort of what I'll call the 2022 setup, we did have some language on our postcard that was in Spanish, indicating that if you wanted to get the survey in Spanish, that you needed to do it online, but that you could. We would have that set up this year, whether we use the 2022 model or the 2024 model. The print survey, though, will always just be in English. It's prohibitively expensive for us to print in more than one language.
We know how many, do we know the metrics on, like last year, how many people took it online versus paper since they have both options?
Yeah, that's what he was, that was the
40 and
60% that he was
Okay,
talking about.
sorry, I missed that.
So it was
Yeah.
40% did the paper survey, 60% did it online. And anybody who got a communication, you had the option to do either.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody who, once we get past the initial period when we're trying to get the statistically significant responses, when we open it up to everybody, then the only option is to do it online. For some insight into what we might get if we use this proposed new model where everybody does it online, their Polco folks are seeing about a 12 to 16% response rate. So what
Slightly
they-
below. Yeah.
Yep, slightly below.
What we saw last time.
Statistically significant in total numbers, but no way to discern if they're coming from districts, right? Or even quadrants or anything like that. I know you say we try to get to spread it out and get the answers. Do we know that?
So last year was one of the first, I think it was the first year when we could actually get the city split up into all 7 distinctive planning districts. In previous years, we've had to bundle, sort of working from east to west. We go 1 is furthest east, 7 is furthest west. We'd have to bundle 1 and 2 and usually 4 and 5. But last year, because we did a really good job promoting it, and I think because the online experience has also been improving, we were able to get enough responses from each of the districts that we could come up with something that we thought was pretty representative for the attitudes and perceptions in those neighborhoods. This year, we're going to push hard again to get a lot of people to respond across the entire city. And that's going to give us that sort of split by neighborhood, Councilman, that you're referring to.
So why not more social media and geofence it, right? On getting really drilling down. I mean, you could easily geofence that to your borders, right? And then you could even go further to the borders of each district. But are we pushing it in social media at all?
Yes,
invite.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. The problem that we'll run into there is that you can't just put it out there for everybody to participate until the people who are sort of randomly selected to participate have an option to do it.
Because there's it's
weighted.
Weighted different?
Yeah, so it's weighted, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep. But at the moment when we can put it out to everybody, yeah, we'll blast it across all our channels.
So for example, in the past, when we had a district that we know by population should be this percentage, but only we got this many returns, the survey company then overweights their responses to make sure it equals out across the community. So that would be we'll call it the statistical survey portion or a significant survey portion, but then we can open it up more broadly. And they ask for geographic location and demographics, what part of the community do you live in as a part of that. So that's how we can start to, drill down to the different districts.
I guess my concern is with the 40%. That seems like a very high percentage. I mean, I would think we might want to do as we've done in the past and go ahead and send out the paper, but encourage people to do electronic, even though they've got the paper.
Mayor, I was actually wondering, I like the idea of moving online because it gives that,
Oh, I agree.
that,
I agree.
translation option and, makes it simpler for us, but I agree, 40% is a lot. So I'm actually, I was curious, would it be possible to have like the postcard have some sort of instruction, like come down to the public library or city hall and you can get a paper copy. So, keeps our costs low. They can still get a paper copy and we know that they got the postcard because we can even put on the instruction, bring the postcard with you. So that way we know they're part of the,
It's gonna take a lot of effort for someone to do that.
yeah,
The-
that's
The only
question.
challenge with that is the survey company may have a challenge with that because they're not the one receiving and distributing the survey. It's independent, keep the independence of the survey tool.
Okay,
They won't want to have city staff involved at all
you're right.
from that part of it. It would be the short answer.
I don't mind. I'll take this offline after this comment because I've lots of comments or ideas on this thing that could go different ways. But to the mayor's point, though, and what I was trying to get to is, then do we know by the data that let's say District 6 is heavier in paper than it is online, right? And you're getting a 90% out of District 6 online. And now you can start saying, okay, do we really not send them a paper because they're 90% paper, right? District 2 is 90% online. And so do you focus there? I think you could narrow
Drill
that
down
down
more.
if those numbers tell you that stuff. Then you could start saying, okay, we'll send heavier paper to District 6 and 7.
Yeah, we should be able to drill down on that, Pete, with the survey company, right? They should be able to tell us the last time what districts, what we saw the flavor of, you think?
I can ask them. I mean, you and
Yeah.
I, Matt, have drilled down on more crosstabs and those save rates.
We
than-
have.
Than anything.
I think we can
But-
find it.
How they responded and
But
what.
the higher cost is the paper compilation, right?
Correct, because then they
So-
need somebody to
And
do the
they-
data
If you're
entry.
sending a mail item where it's a card or an envelope with, I mean, it seems like the cost would not.
It's a
be-
little bit more, but
A little
nominal.
bit, but not that much.
Yeah.
And then if you're sending the paper, if you can encourage them to do it electronically, that'd be the approach, especially 40%. I mean, that's just a huge number.
I mean, is there a way to start with online only and then if we're not getting a response back, then send out a wave of paper?
Well, how do you reach the online? I mean, right now we're sending the paper and giving them a link.
Right,
And they're selected, but how do you,
We're sending them a postcard,
postcard.
right?
to go online.
We'll talk with the survey company about that because there could be, because typically they send two postcards or a postcard and a survey. So if I remember correctly, Pete, and again, we can drill down and follow back up with the council, but is if they get the postcard and they fill it out right away, they don't get the second mailing.
We're already kind of doing.
I think so. So we're already kind of, if they've already filled it out online, they're not getting a second mailing. But again, I don't want to speak out of turn on that. We'd have to follow back up, but I think that's how it works.
But we don't have
You're-
every
you're
email
correct.
address for every resident in Clive.
We don't have what?
We don't have an email address for every resident in Clive, do we?
No, they'll get mailed the postcard.
That was my point.
Yeah.
To Ted's point
Yeah.
of sending it electronically initially,
Oh, no, that we couldn't do.
couldn't do.
Because you couldn't random sample
Right.
you got a random sample by address.
No, man, I like the
Yeah.
idea of reaching out to the company. I'm sure they've got the same situation with other communities as well, looking to go electronic. Let's see how they've handled it with other
Right.
cities and you know,
Yeah.
let's
And-
get their
And
feedback.
the default, if we still think it's questionable, the default is we go back to what we did the last time and then we see if that number is trending
Mhm.
less than 40% paper like we had 2 years ago.
I think it'll keep going down. I think if we promote it, I think people will.
And we get more targeted with the online
Yeah,
piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of a marketing package from the city too, to really
Right.
promote that online experience with this and cost savings and et cetera. There's a lot of advantages to it, but I think we need to really push that in some of our communications out too.
I was telling Ted, we could just get the MPO streetlight data and
Let's do
Don't
that.
even need it.
Text them all.
All right, thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Just two other items. Next week, we've narrowed it down to 2 design firms for the City Hall Library renovations here. We did an RFP process last month, had 5 responses. We've narrowed it down to 2 to interview. So hopefully in April, we'll have a recommendation for you all on the design team for the remodel of a portion of this building. And then just lastly, the next council meeting, I'll be participating virtually. I'll be at the IMMI conference in Iowa City, but I will be here at the meeting just online like Pete. So Pete and I will switch places.
Okay,
So with that, that's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
all right, questions for Matt? Do we have any correspondence? Anything else on Pi Day 3.14?
Happy Pi Day.
Going,
I've not heard that.
oh, you didn't know it was Pi Day?
Did not realize that.
Well, you learn something new every day, right? We'll adjourn at 7:24. Thank you.